I'm running this company that has over 2,500 employees, and it's really a major force in industry.
What are some of those problems you guys are helping solve on a daily basis?
I think at the end of the day, our North Star is net collection. For every dollar you bill, how much comes back and hits the bank? We need the industry. We need our providers to be 95 plus. That's the standard.
The first thing I saw when I jumped on board, it seemed like no one had like any visibility of like data, metrics. They were operating with so little transparency, into their performance metrics.
What do you see happening in the next 5 or so years?
We just got hit with the budget bill, right? And there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Unfortunately, it's getting more complex.
So with the tools that we have with Prochant Pulse, we're able to allocate the right work to the right people at the right time.
All right, we got BJ and Joey from Prochant. How's it going, guys?
Doing
Great. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for joining the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Sure, anytime.
How's the weather in Charlotte these days?
It's been hot, It's been a hot summer for us.
That's muggy.
So I'm looking forward to getting into the fall here soon.
Awesome. Well, let's kick this thing off, Joey. So you have an interesting story. You're the CEO of Prochant now. You've come such a long way from consulting at Brightree all the way to CEO, one of the top RCMs in our space. What would you say an early vision you had for yourself? Did you ever see yourself becoming the CEO of a company? Was that always in the cards? Or just tell us a little bit about who you are, your story, and what got you here.
So, yeah, I think past me would be pretty proud of where I've gotten. When I first went to college, I was pre-med. And so I was going to be a doctor. And I think it was my sophomore year of college that I changed my major and went into business. And I really, looked at it as, I'm kind of pigeonholed into doing a single sort of thing the rest of my life if I go this medical path. But, if I go into business, then that, everything's open. I can do any industry and I can get into healthcare if I want. But honestly, my stated goal when I started the MBA program was to be a CEO. So that's awesome. It's cool to achieve that goal, right? And I'm really, really thankful to have gotten that opportunity here at Prochant. I've been with the company now for 10 years, but before this, I came from the provider side. So I'm an operator. I'm a DME operator in my heart. When I got out of school, I worked for a DME company for 10 years and worked my way up the chain of command. And so eventually I got picked up by Brightree and I got to move from being on the provider side to being on the vendor side. And they made me a consultant. I got to travel the country working with providers. Eventually one of those providers hired me as their VP of revenue cycle. And then this company, Prochant, was our billing service. So initially I was a customer. And when that company sold, I spoke with the owner and he needed somebody to come in and run Prochant for him. And so it was just a perfect fit. But I've always had that sort of operator mindset my entire career. So I think that goes to show how far we've come, the quality, the incredible outcomes that our clients experience. This is a revenue cycle company being run by an operator, not a finance guy, not somebody who came from some other industry or even, physician billing or hospital billing. I came from DME. So I'm very passionate about it. But I think also, past me would be really shocked that I'm running this company that has over 2,500 employees and that's really a major force in an industry. Back then sort of being on the provider side, just thinking about my patients and my community. Instead, now I've got the whole country in my backyard, and it's really incredible. So
Crazy. Yeah, it's a global company if you think about it. And I remember when I first met BJ, I think 6 years ago. How much have you guys grown since? In the last 5 years, I feel like it's really taken off. I think when we first met, you definitely didn't have 2,500 employees. How much have you guys grown since then?
And I know when I first started, Joey. Yeah, when I first started, I met Wayne 7 years ago. I think we had 400 people or so, I think, and somewhere in that range. And now we're close to 3,000. So Joey'd probably know a lot more because he was running a lot of the
So,
operations.
so what's the secret sauce there? It seems like you put some like gasoline on the fire.
They hired BJ. He went to.
I guess it was. Yeah, I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's
He's done
honestly
more than me.
from my perspective, I think it's the culture that we have here. Honestly, it's the team and the people. Joey kind of instilled that from the beginning, and Matthew kind of, I think, started it from way back when. But Joey's been running the company even when he wasn't CEO. He's been running it for a long time, and I think he's brought in the right team, both here in operations, and he's built a culture that just supports each other, right? And it produces results for not only us internally, but for our clients. And I think that's a big differentiator that we have here and why people like working here.
Yeah.
sure.
BJ was the first sales guy I ever hired.
Yeah.
And
Road warrior.
I know. And I got so lucky. So I've got an incredible rainmaker, that's for sure. But also, it's really focusing on the outcomes, focusing on the success and getting these providers paid, for their products and services. That's at the root of it all, so that
What
they
would you
can focus on patient care.
Absolutely. You guys help all these providers. What would you say are some of the common or the biggest pain points some of these HME providers have? And, what are some of those problems you guys are helping solve on a daily basis?
Yeah.
They are vast and varied.
Showing
But I think at the end of the day, our North Star is net collections, right? For every dollar you bill, how much comes back and hits the bank? And, we need the industry. We need our providers to be 95 plus. That's the standard. And so helping our providers get there, and in going down that path, you also address things like open AR balances, DSO, some of the other things that they really think about. But that cash acceleration and that net collections is really the North Star. And that's the number one thing people are struggling with, is achieving those world-class results.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I saw when I jumped on board, and it seemed like no one had like any visibility of like data, metrics, anything. Like there was just, they were operating with so little transparency with, into their performance metrics. So I'm sure, Wayne, you saw that when you were out there on the road too. It was mind-boggling, really, right? Like, how could you operate a business, without knowing your metrics and how well you were doing, right? So, that's was a common theme.
Yeah, you guys talk a lot about like doing RCM right, and what does that really mean in today's like healthcare environment?
Yeah, it's not about how many claims you touch. It's about the outcomes. It's about the results. It's about, again, that net collections and those other trailing metrics. It's also about doing it right in the sense that there's a lot of risk to the provider. They can be put in an orange jumpsuit quite easily, unfortunately. So there's a lot of like anxiety there, and making sure that you have a team that understands HME and is looking through these orders before we bill these claims, and taking the right actions and making sure that we're not setting ourselves up so that audit ready compliance is critical. And I think the last piece is bringing together technology and talent and building a process around that, right? It's a lot of companies are heavy on one side or the other, but getting that right, it's really the sweet spot. And so making sure you have smart tools that are backed by smart people, without one, the other leads to failure.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, I've seen you talk a lot about AI at different conferences and online as well. Can you tell us a little bit how you guys are leveraging AI, or any thoughts on the impact of that on their industry?
AI seems to be the main topic every time
my
we
gosh.
do a podcast. It's actually the only singular topic that comes up in every single podcast. So yeah, we'd definitely love to hear where you guys are implementing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what's happened, right? If you look at the last couple of years, it's like we weren't even talking about it hardly, and now all of a sudden it's every conversation, and every day it's something we're involved in. And I saw you guys were at the Tenor Gala, so
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of big players coming in, new companies into the market, taking on pieces of the process and doing it better, automating. It's exciting to see. We are involved in a lot of that stuff. So, we have AI internally that we leverage. we also have partners that we work with. And so, Prochant's strategy sort of evolves around partnering with best in class, AI companies, but also positioning ourselves as sort of the human in the loop, because a lot of this AI, there are exceptions that kick out. Almost every AI solution has exceptions that kick out, right? And so you need people who understand the industry to manage through those exceptions and train the AI to get better. So being a part of that, we are on the back end of a lot of these AI solutions right now. But then also sort of building in AI to our own solution, our own end-to-end revenue cycle solution, right? Where we will work with a provider, we will go contingency, and we will bring the technology to bear. So those are sort of the two paths that we're sort of simultaneously pursuing, as well as having our own internal. We probably have 5 POCs right now internally of different AI vendors, different AI use cases, everything from AI phone calls to denial prediction to, having a help desk type agent that understands the SOPs and the payer rules and can answer questions for the agents doing the work. So there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. It's definitely something that's a daily task for me, is
awesome.
staying up on AI and then thinking about the future.
It seems
you guys
like that
have
comes in a lot in your messaging on your website too. It's, it seems like that is kind of at your core right now, is how we're going to kind of push that AI component in your services that you're offering, right?
That's right. I mean, that's the future of rev cycle is, a heavy AI component where we don't need as many people, where the people we do have are focused on working exceptions, and where the data flow is a lot faster. The payments come in a lot faster. The orders get turned around a lot faster with higher accuracy, right? Where we're catching these mistakes up front. We have streamlined processes to get documentation corrected and get the order moving so we can get the patient what they need and get paid.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you guys have a unique perspective, kind of being the manpower, getting to see all of these different tools, all different softwares like Nico Health. It's interesting. You guys are kind of like behind the curtain, touching all different types of software across our industry.
It is. It's a really cool perspective because, like you said, we're sort of software agnostic in that, our clients are working in Nico, the other systems out there. We also are working with a lot of these AI vendors, either directly or, on behalf of the provider.
Yep. And that's why I feel like AI comes a lot. And, on my side of it, API connectivity, it's like every other conversation. And I just sat back the other day and I thought about a trend where when we first implemented our APIs was for a big enterprise company. Now we have mom and pops, pharmacies in small towns signing up for an API package because they want to take a stab at building something themselves or maybe bolt on to a third-party application. So the trend has definitely shifted. Even just people know what an API is without explaining it to them, from, whether they're a veteran in the industry or they're newer in DME. It's just, there's definitely a trend shifting in technology. So it's exciting to see. And I feel like 5 years ago, people were just very content with the status quo and they basically solved problems just by hiring people or outsourcing, but now they're looking for technology and are much more open to, looking at new stuff like Nico Health, which may be new to some people, or what you guys are doing behind the scenes. So how do you guys notice that same type of shift with the providers that you work with?
I don't think we've talked to a single provider in the last, couple of years that hasn't brought up AI, talked about AI.
Yeah.
Right, BJ?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
exactly. When you think about it too,
Yeah.
like how funny is it? Like our clients and your clients, they still get faxes. Like that's like funny, right? When you think about a fax machine these days, that's pretty amazing. Like it's amazing that we still use
Probably
faxes.
healthcare is probably the only industry that uses it, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't know where ever I've seen a fax machine besides my home office when I was like 5 years old. It was my dad.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, Wayne, I would almost want to turn the question around on you a little bit and ask, how is Nico Health looking at AI, thinking about AI, especially when you have this proliferation of AI vendors out there, like we mentioned Tenor earlier. I'm curious what your guys' perspective is.
Yeah, we're kind of the stance of you guys, in terms of being agnostic. What's been unique about us is we have, I would say, the most robust API in the industry and a very API forward architecture. We expose most of our application via API and make it easy for companies like Tenor, Notable, you guys with your backend platform to connect to our software without, throwing attacks on there or making it so frustrating to work with that you just say the heck with it. So, what I thought was interesting is all of these AI companies, I'm sure they knocked on a bunch of doors, but they all gravitate towards us because they knew about our APIs. So if a client
Yeah.
came to us and said, we want to use X, Y, and Z, all the client has to do is subscribe to our APIs, and then we give the vendor the credentials so they have access to this data. So, we give, I always say that we're trying to build this ecosystem of the next gen companies or tech forward companies and let them plug into Nico Health. There's plenty of room for all of them. We're even working on our own native AI functionality, which is exciting, but we will still always support all the other vendors because, there's tons of opportunity out there. And I think some of these AI companies will eventually start carving out different areas of expertise, right? But we want to make sure companies, if a client has Nico Health, they have access to the APIs and they can find the best fit. They could use ours in the future, but, we're very agnostic. And, there's clients that have built API to connections to software we might not even heard about because we give them the autonomy to actually build on top of the platform, because I think that's the way things are going. Like if you think about Microsoft Outlook, it's so simple. It has thousands of plugins, right? It's so user friendly. So we want to essentially, have that really strong core functionality, but I think people are learning you don't want to be stuck in just the world of the core platform. You need extensibility to work with, because there's all different types of DMEs, all different types of business models in this space. So I think us being like API friendly or forward, it's been a huge competitive advantage for us. Honestly, people have come to us saying, I can't get my vendor's API. I have to submit a use case. They're charging me an arm and a leg for every transaction. They're just trapping me in the world where it's like, all right, Nico Health, we have a company that bills $500 million a year through our APIs and they use us as the billing engine. And we just made it totally feasible. So
Seamless,
that's been
right, Nick? Right?
yeah, really seamless. It's built in a modern way. We provide solutions consultants to help our clients leverage our API because it's really the direction things are going. So, we're
That's awesome. That's
that
smart.
trend. Yeah, we recently launched like a managed data warehouse service. So you could plug like a Power BI or Tableau directly into the Nico Health database. So I think things like that and in other industries, it's kind of the status quo. Healthcare and you kind of lag behind. So that's how we're tackling it. Things change. We have some stuff in the works, but we have some really strong relationships with pretty much all the AI companies out there. And I think it was up to them. They would have their clients on Nico Health because of this, actually giving them the API. They don't have to do RPA. They don't have to figure out ways into our system. We let them in our system. So I think just making it easy to do business with is kind of our approach.
That's
That's
smart.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, going off of that way, I know I kind of ask this on every podcast, and we've had a bunch of the AI companies on our podcast already. We've had Trey from Tenor on, we had Adam from CompliantRx. We're going to have a few others in the future. So there's obviously a trend of there being multiple players in a very similar space, and that kind of, I think, parlays into a conversation with you where there's a lot of players in the RCM space, right? So I'm just curious, how do you differentiate what makes Prochant a little bit different than the other players in the space that from the surface may seem like they might be doing something very similar?
That's a great,
Let's you start with that one.
yeah,
BJ.
great question.
That's a question for the sales guy,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
No, that's a great question. But I think we call it our Prochant process, right? It's our process that we put together when any client comes on board, right? So when any client comes on board, we're going to review and do a planning process, right? Plan and review the data, see what it looks like, get the eyes from the sky to, the really knowledgeable people to really review it. And then we're going to use our technology in the background right after that and make sure we're allocating that work appropriately. So with the tools that we have with Prochant Pulse, we're able to allocate the right work to the right people at the right time, right? We're able to score complexity of the work. We're able to review everything we're doing, set up in the right queues, right? Prioritize it correctly. But then after that, we're actually, able to monitor the work and how well we're doing and how well the client's doing, right? We're able to track all the metrics. We're transparent with all of our data, our quality data, our production numbers. So we want to be as transparent as possible with all of our information and all the data. And then really just, then we're going to execute, right? We're going to execute on that work. And while we're monitoring everything going on, and it's just a big circle. So plan, allocate, execute, monitor, and just go in a circle, right? So it's about planning the work, allocating the right work to the right people, and then executing on the plan that we put together from the start, and then monitoring the results of it. And then, back for square one. So I think that's one of the big differentiators is our team and our technology kind of put together as one that we could bring, and, that we bring to our clients and everyone in the industry.
There's really only a couple really big competitors that can actually do what we can do, which is go at risk, deliver end-to-end revenue cycle management. There's only a couple companies that can handle that, right? And so there are a couple of things that really set us apart. Like BJ said, our very purposeful approach to revenue cycle. Like we have a plan, we have a whole method. We've mapped out the best practices, and we are process people. And our core, we are process people. So that's a big deal. Also, we have a wholly owned, captive offshore. None of our competitors have that. And so the fact that we own our back office, we have full control over that team, and we are one team, one Prochant, able to deliver this end-to-end package really sets us apart. And I think the fact that we're not owned by a publicly traded company or a large PE group or something like that, like we're still able to be scrappy. We're still able to act like a startup, and we're still able to deliver a customized solution to the provider, meaning them whatever software they need, we can customize processes to them. So we're very flexible in our approach as well.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that really set us apart.
Yeah. And just, I don't know, even Wayne, if you know, so we're in India, right? We're in 3 different cities in India. So we have 3 locations. I think we have 7 offices now in India. So we're across multiple cities, which is a huge advantage, being the one Prochant team. So mitigate risk, right? You just never know what's going to happen out there. So we're able to shift necessary and tasks if needed, but it's all about, aligning the team up for success.
Yeah. And we opened a nearshore office as well in South America. So we have some great capabilities nearshore and offshore.
That's awesome. So you guys are building, I would say, you've 5x'd in 5 years. What is next for Prochant?
You got to do it again, right?
Take over the world.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, take over the world. That's where we're headed. No, but I think really the industry has reached a point where you're going to start to see some forks in the road where some providers are going to go ahead and they're going to engage with a dozen different AI companies and build out their own custom AI solution. And for those companies, we'll have something for them. We'll be able to help run and manage their exceptions. We'll be able to help them with consulting and process management. It won't be as heavy on the employee front. And then we'll have the providers who sort of decide, I'm going to partner with a world-class revenue cycle service, and I'm going to let them bring the technology to bear so that I can just focus on growing my market, growing my patients, growing my team, moving my people because providers didn't get into this because they love administrative work and billing. Right? They did this because they're clinicians at heart, and they care about the patient, they care about the community, they care about their doctors. And so they want to be able to focus on that. So I think that we're going to start to see sort of that fork happen more. But what's great is we'll have a solution for each of those parties.
It sounds like it's kind of almost like, I don't know if a la carte is the right word, but you can plug in Prochant where you need them, or you can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to focus on growing the company and let the experts handle, everything after I get the referral, and I can keep growing the business at scale.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, we do both. So wherever we need to help supplement a team or take on everything in the rev cycle, so we could handle whatever's best for the client, right? Because I think Joey said it at its core. It's right. It's keeping our clients, I would say, the health of the client financially, and also help them provide the best patient experience, right? That's the goal.
And when you guys say you take on the software, what do you mean by that? So they can have a core application like Nico Health, but if they want to implement some different aspects of AI, you guys can actually they don't need to go contract with these companies directly. You guys can kind of take on the technology piece and the service.
That's right.
Is that how it would be structured?
Yeah, that's right. And bundle it in on the contingency fee so that they get the benefits of the technology, the increased accuracy, as well as some of the savings, but they don't have to manage through the whole implementation and all these proofs of concept, all these different vendors. The reality is each one of these AI companies is bringing a point solution to the market.
Yeah.
But when you look at the revenue cycle, there's literally hundreds of different processes that have to be managed. And so it's a nightmare. We're going through it now to bring in all the different technology point solutions and help them, engage in these processes, automate as much as possible. But if we're not really improve quality of that process and turnaround times. So there's, we'll be doing a lot of that heavy lifting.
Yeah, I actually love that because I sell software and it's not that fun. It's fun when they buy it, but the evaluation of software and like demo fatigue is a real thing. So if somebody can go to you guys and say, hey, we have it figured out, let us piece this together for you. So you're not just starting from square one with a massive learning curve. I think
Right.
that is a really good approach, honestly, because
And it's kind of consultative,
if I had to
right?
go demo every AI company right now, it would take me a month and a half, and they'd each have 4 or 5 demos each to really evaluate something. If you're a big company and nothing's ever a one and done, right? There's a lot of stakeholders. So if they can go to somebody that's already at least has a playbook or a roadmap to implement technologies around their core software, I think that's super interesting approach.
Yeah, thank you.
What were you going to say, Alex? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
no, I was just going to say it's kind of like a consultative approach where someone says, hey, here are the problems I'm trying to solve for. Here's how we run our DME. What do you suggest? What do you recommend? How can we be more efficient? How can we
Right.
grow faster? And you can kind of come in and modulate or, do whatever you need to do to make sure that they're successful, correct?
That's right. Exactly. Help them orchestrate the whole thing. Like even if they want direct relationships with the vendors, bring the vendors to the table, right? Like I know you talked to Bruce at Allegiance Group, right? So we bring him in a lot to help take over patient pay for clients. Bring in like a Tenor or one of these other guys when they need the AI solution, but they're not sure where to go. So yeah, I think that that's what I mean when I said, we can kind of bring the technology. We have no intent of being like an EMR. Here. I think our software agnostic nature is something that we really are proud of, and it's done well for us.
And you guys probably have a lot of, obviously a lot of clients, but the knowledge is compounding of, hey, this worked great, this didn't, this is how we help this client solve this. You're saving somebody so much headache than if I just wake up one day and I want to implement AI. It's a lot of research, a lot of sales calls of people telling you possibly conflicting things. You guys can kind of be like the voice of reason or the source of truth to help kind of, implement this, deploy it much quicker, right? Because if you're a big company, a sales cycle is very long. So I think that's an awesome approach. I didn't know you guys were doing that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because everybody knows the word AI, but in practice, they probably have no idea, or they have some idea that they dreamt up. And, if you're not in the software world, you think anything's possible, right? You think it's all just a magic.
Oh yeah.
You think it's all just
It
a press a
sounds
button, done,
so
but
easy,
Yeah.
right? And I
Reality-
talk to ChatGPT every day, and it's
Yeah.
so easy.
My
But the
best friend.
reality of DME revenue cycle is rough.
and it's something with so much red tape where you can get a phone call one day and have all your money clawed back and you could go under. So it's,
Yeah.
it's high at some point to get it right.
So complex.
What kind of bold predictions do you have for the future of this space? Obviously, we were saying over the past few years, everything's been kind of going like wildfire. The space has been progressing very, very fast, this industry. What do you see happening in the next 5 or so years?
Wow. We just got hit with the budget bill, right? And there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act,
Right.
right? So I think, unfortunately, it's getting more complex is the sort of the answer there, because there's a few things that are happening with that act specifically. We're going to start to see a substantially larger population of un or underinsured individuals and patients, right? And that's going to come from the Medicaid work requirements, some of the changes to Medicaid funding, and some changes to the funding of the Affordable Care Act, which is the Obamacare commercial plans. So, fewer people will have those plans. And then Medicaid patients, they're going to have to become re-eligible every 6 months. So like prove that they're eligible for Medicaid every 6 months, which right now it's once a year. I think that's going to translate into even more patients losing coverage sort of mid-cycle. Like for every provider, you have a patient on, like, let's say, an oxygen concentrator, and then all of a sudden one day you get a denial that they're no longer eligible, and you find out that the coverage lapsed. So best practice with Medicaid is you've got to recheck eligibility every single month, right? And you got to automate that and before those rental claims drop. But doing a better job with eligibility in the front office and getting the patients loaded properly, and then getting those automated checks in place to make sure that they don't lose coverage, so that's definitely coming. There's more changes to Medicaid as well that are just going to make it more complex managing through that payer. So that sort of stuff is happening. They're looking at competitive bidding coming yet again. So you guys probably saw that news dropped. It's all going to kind of hit it around the same time too, 27, 28, that we're going to be hit with new bidding rounds and contracts going live. And now they're pulling in CGMs to the competitive bid. So that's all sort of the government regulatory world that's getting more complex and difficult. The higher portion of patients being underinsured means we either have more charity care or, write-offs, right? Or cash pay, right? So having a really strong process for cash pay, getting those credit cards on file, getting those updated when they expire, running those payments on a regular basis, that sort of stuff's going to become more and more important. And then you think we're going to see more and more big payers doing with value-based care contracts where they contract with a single provider. There's a couple that have been announced recently that are, been shell-shocked the industry. But unfortunately, I think that we're going to see that preferred provider agreements where insurances want to shift that risk. That's what they're doing. They're shifting their risk for this patient population over to this provider who takes this contract, right? Because they essentially get a per diem on the patient census, and they have to deliver all DME needed for that population. And they've got to do their calculations right, or they can end up underwater. But now they want to turn around and contract with DME companies where they don't have a footprint. So navigating that world of more value-based care and single source contracts, as well as competitive bidding, as well as all the changes to Medicaid, we've got a lot coming in the next 3 to 5 years. So yeah.
No, that's a great answer. Are you prepared? You ready to take it on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they need a partner like us.
That's
This
right.
is crazy stuff. You need somebody to help you navigate it. You don't have to navigate this road alone is the answer there. There are companies like us and others that'll help you navigate this stuff. And Nico's another one. So I think it's unfortunate for the industry, but it'll be a good thing for those of us who handle it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. This just goes to show like the importance of like even Medicaid as it is already a difficult enough payer with people even on an annual basis falling in and falling in and out of the plan and the coverage. So, having systems to even just simply automate insurance verifications on a monthly basis, of course we do that, but there's people out there doing it manually or
Not at all.
systematic
Yeah.
way. And, that stuff you could be implementing today to prepare for something like this. And you'll still have huge benefits today, but if things get more rigid or change quicker, you need to have, strong technology partners.
Yeah. They don't want to pay the quarter for the eligibility check, which I get. But at the same time, the stakes are so high that it's really important that you're working with a technology that can support that.
Absolutely. Well, I think we got a lot of really good insights from you guys today. I don't know if you've seen our past podcast, but we always finish up with a rapid fire round. If one of you guys wants to be the rapid fire recipient, let me know which one.
Oh man.
CEO Joey's got it. He's got it.
These are no
We're
great.
gonna
No
volunteer
brain-
VJ.
We could both do it.
All right.
You got to.
It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Tacos or pizza?
Pizza.
Pizza.
Texting or calling?
Texting.
Oh man.
Yeah.
VJ's old school. He's gonna
I
say
like
calling.
call, but I text.
Yeah.
Early
Yeah,
bird or night owl?
He actually calls me and doesn't follow with the text, so he's old school.
Ask Wayne that
I'm a
question
night
for
owl.
me, Alex. You could ask
Yeah.
Wayne that early bird.
Texting or
night owl.
calling, Wayne?
Yep.
Oh,
No,
early
text-
bird or night owl, Wayne.
Early bird.
Oh,
or night
I know
owl.
DJ likes to call. DJ likes to call old school.
Early bird on my side. Wayne knows.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a early bird. I'm a night owl.
Would you rather have book smarts or street smarts?
Street.
I'd go book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go
Yeah,
book.
you need both, right?
Need-
Would you? All right, this is a weird one. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Wow. Fighting.
Let's go with one.
I guess
I'll go one horse.
I'd go with the 100. Yeah.
You guys got two different ways of going about this.
Well,
It's
it's yin and yang. We've been together for a while.
yeah, exactly. Cool.
Great,
All right, I
great.
think we could wrap it up on that one. BJ, Joey, thanks so much for coming out today. You guys had a lot of great insights for our viewers. If anyone wants to get in contact with you and reach out to Prochant, where can they find you?
Yeah, prochant.com. It'll have all of our information. They could reach me at bjm@prochant.com. Anyway, they'll find all of our information on our website for sure.
Perfect.
Yep. Just Google Prochant.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, BJ, Joey, thanks so much for coming on the show. We had a great time today. And if any of our viewers and listeners have not yet subscribed, please do subscribe to the Claim to Fame podcast. Guys, thanks again for coming on. This was fun.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Appreciate it.